This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we'll try to identify the how we can come up with the arrays example here. So basically, whenever we are trying to work with this particular arrays here, arrays will store the multiple values. So as of now, we come up with only one variable will store only one value. But if I'm trying to come up with the arrays here, the same variable will hold multiple values. So this is the simple example string array. Getting the point. So this particular array is come up with multiple values here. So you can store around 1, 2, 3, some like around 10 or 15 some values we can store. But what is the condition we should provide here? This array is going to work based on the size. So first we need to define the size. So later, based on the size, we can insert the values. Getting the point. Based on the size, we need to initialize the values. So how we can initialize the size, how we can provide the size. So the size, if we want to provide the size, first we need to create an object. How I'm trying to create an object here? The object here, basically, so what kind of array you are going to create? It's like a integer, or it's like a long, it's like a any char. So based on the different data type, we can come up with an array. So simple example, int array I'm trying to create. Okay, so this is an array I'm trying to create. You can see I'm come up with a new and so type. What is the type I'm trying to provide? That is called int. Here I'm giving size as a 10. Getting the point. So size I'm giving as a 10. How many elements we can store? Up to the 10 elements we can store. So here what we need to understand the indexes, because arrays will come up with the indexes here. Size is different, indexes are different. So if we observe carefully, let me give you, this is an array. So internally array will store the values like this. Getting the point. And the indexes will start from the 0, 1, 2, 3, something like last 9. Getting the point. So 0 to 9, it will become 10. Okay, so this is the indexes. The entire size is 10 we have. The entire size is 10. So if I'm trying to insert the value, like if you observe here, the into ARR, this is the array reference. So earlier we should not use this. The brackets here, what is the purpose of this particular bracket here? It is trying to providing it's the variable will hold the multiple values. Whatever the variable we define here, the ARR will hold the multiple values here. So this is we need to understand very carefully and observe. Again, I'm trying to come up with the ARR, the brackets here. I'm giving the index here. So what is the index I'm giving? 0. So why I'm giving this particular 0? Because this is the first element I'm trying to insert here. So something like I want to insert the 10 value. Now what you understand here? So if you see, this particular 10 value will store into this particular 0 index location. So this particular entire array will point it to the this particular ARR. So ARR 0. ARR 0 is nothing but this is the ARR 0. And later, if I'm trying to come up with the ARR 1, it is pointing to the ARR 1. And same way, ARR 2. Like it will try to increment here. Getting the point. So this is very important. We need to understand here. If we observe carefully, so what I'm doing here, whatever the 10 value we have, I'm trying to insert into this particular 0. Okay, and once the ARR 0 is inside, so this is the 10 value will store here. This is the 10 value will store. And what is the second value? The second value here, the same the reference we need to use something like ARR. So I'm going to give 1. And after giving the 1, what is the value we are trying to initialize? So it will become 20. Now up to how many elements we can initialize? Up to we can initialize 0 to 9, because what is the size we given here? The size we given as a 10 here. The size we given as a 10. So this is very important here. If you define the size, so we can initialize the values here. Otherwise, we have another option come up with this particular array concept that we'll call it as a initializer. We'll see later how it is going to work, initializer concept. But this is the basic steps we need to understand whenever we are trying to work with this particular array. Okay, internally how the structure is going to work. This is the particular such structure here. So 20, 30, and something like 40, and finally we'll come up with 90. So this is the 0 to 9 element we initialize. Now what happens here? So if I'm going to create ARR, here I'm giving 10. ARR 10 is equals to something like 100. So what happens here? Whenever I'm trying to give this particular line, what happens internally? It will give you an error here. Why it will give you an error? Because you can see the size is 0 to 9. The size is 0 to 9. But what is the index number we are giving here? 10. Getting the point? So 10 is not available. If the index is not available, how the value is going to store? Getting the point? So this is very important here. So we'll see what kind of the exception we are going to get when the index is not available. Okay, let me clear this console, and now we'll go back to here. So here I'm giving something like 10, something like 100 value. Okay, so we'll see what is an error we are going to get. Now you can see array index out of bound exception. Getting the point? So here you can see index is 10 out of bound the particular given size here. Getting the point? Length. So whatever the size we are discussing, that we can call it as a length. Okay, basically length is a variable. It will try to define the size here. So if you observe, as in the yesterday or day before yesterday, we discussed one condition here. So something like ARR dot length. Getting the point? ARR dot length, if it is greater than 0. So what is the length it is returning? It is returning some integer value. The length is having the value called 10. So I can see index is 10 and length is same. But here the indexer will start from the 0. Internally, the indexes are going to start from 0 and it will end up with the length minus 1 or the size minus 1. Right? So this is not satisfied here. So let me remove this particular 9. If I'm going to give this particular 9, we will see any error we are going to get. Now you can see nothing, no error, but we did not print the value. So we did not print the value. So to print the value, now what we can do? Again, yesterday we discussed about the for loop here. So I'm trying to come up with the for loop int send to I is equals to 0 and later I less than AR dot length. So this is the condition I'm making and I plus plus. And internally what I'm doing here, so sysout I'm trying to print the ARR. Here you can give the I. So why I'm giving this particular I here? Basically, this I initially it is starting from the 0. So this is the condition we have internally, ARR dot length. Now what happens internally? So if we observe carefully, every time, how many times this particular loop will repeat, the I value will change here because of this particular iteration block. Because of this particular iteration block, the I value will change. And finally, this I is working as an index here because where we are trying to provide inside this particular brackets here. Inside this particular bracket, we are giving as a I. Whatever the value we are giving, that will treat it as a index value, not the original value. The original value, so using this, we are trying to initializing. And whenever we are trying to use like this, we are trying to load the original value based on the index here. So for example, you can imagine again, this is another array here. So in the 0 and first and the second, third, we did not provide the value, but in the last 9 we given. So if you see, this is the last value and 10 I given and 28 given. So between we did not provide any value. So now observe 0, 1 and this one is a 9. Okay, now if you see what I am doing here, so initially I value will 0. Initially I value 0. So whenever I value 0, the condition we need to check. What is the condition? I value 0, ARR dot length. The length what is we are having? 10 because the size we given as a 10. Okay, now 0 less than 10. The size is sorry, the condition is satisfying or not? Yes, the condition is satisfying because the 10 is a some bigger value compared to this particular 0. Okay, now whenever this particular 10 is a bigger value, what happens here? This condition is satisfied. Once this condition is satisfied, it is entering into line number 10. So whenever the line number 10 is enter, now what happens internally? ARR I. What is I value? 0. So this is the basically this is the ARR reference. Now ARR of I value what? 0. So directly it will go to this location. Okay, now what we are doing here, whatever the original value we are having, we are trying to print this particular. Okay, now second iteration, I value will become 1. Okay, so whenever I value will become 1, again we are checking the condition, 1 less than 10, the condition will satisfy. So once the condition is satisfied here, now what I'm doing internally, once the condition is satisfied here, what I'm doing internally, again we are checking AR of I. I now current value is 1. So it is moving into the second index. So it will print the 20 value. Okay. And later I value will become 2. So in the second indexes, we don't have value. And in the third, we don't have. And fourth, and up to 9. So I can see this is the 9. Now what happens here? Directly, it will go to this particular 9. And what is the value we have? That is called 100. And finally, this is the condition we are going to get, 10 less than 10. So this condition will not satisfy. Once it is not satisfied, it will come out of the next line. So this is all about the loading the values from the particular array. And this is section, what we are doing here, we are trying to initializing the value. So we are trying to storing the value into this particular ARR, and using this particular line, we are trying to load the value from the particular arrays. Okay, so this is very important here. Let me run the simple example first, so that we'll get to know how this is working exactly. Now I'm going to run this example. If you see 10 and 20 we given, and finally we given 100. But why I'm getting these zeros? Because the initial values, because based on the data type we are getting initial values. Okay, now what we will do, we'll try to insert to multiple values. So here ARR 5, something like 50 I want to insert, ARR 8, something like 80 I want to insert, and second, some randomly I'm trying to initializing the value, and okay, so if I'm going to run this example, we'll see what are all the values we are going to get. Now observe carefully, some we are trying to come up with the random values, so, and 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and 4 we don't have, 5 we are initializing, 6, 7 we don't have, and 8 and 9. So this is the way we can come up with the specified index number, and we can initialize the value. So directly, whenever I'm trying to specify 3, what happens internally? Directly it will go to the specified index number 3, and it will initialize the value called 30. Getting the point? So this is the way the one dimension example is going to work. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, now what we will do, how we can come up with the array initializer. So this is the basic example we identified. Now we'll move on to the array initializer example. So let me comment out this example. Okay, so once we comment out, now what I'm doing here, I'm not going to provide the size of this particular array. So without giving the size, how we can come up with this particular array example. So observe, now I will use the double data type, something like nums. This is the reference of this particular array, double array. and this we'll call it as a array initializer. So this is we are coming with the particular curly brackets here. So what I'm doing here internally, 10.1, this is the one value, and 12.2 something, this is the second value, 45.4, and 89 dot something 8, something like 74.4, and 96.3, and 65.6. Okay, so these are all the some values I'm giving. So this is very important here. If you observe carefully, this section is also returning array type. This section is also returning array type, but how it is working internally? Getting the point? So how it is working internally? This is the two steps it's going to work. So what is the first step here? If you see, this is the nums, and the array I'm giving. What is the size internally it is going to use based on the elements here? If you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the 7 elements we are having. So it will come up with the size is 7. And later, now what we will do? It will try to come up with the nums 0. What is the value in the first index location? Something like 10.1. 10.1, and the same way it will try to come up with all the values here, 10.1, sorry, the number 0, number 1, number 2, like this. Okay, let's keep on initializing the all the values. So instead of doing this two steps operations here directly, we can come up with this particular value and we can perform some operations here. So this is the another way to create a arrays here. This will call it as a array initializer. Okay, now, so what we can understand here, if I'm trying to initializing this value, how we can load this particular value. Let me copy this particular loop and I will print here. So instead of ARR, we'll come up with the nums. Okay, so this is only the two changes we can change here. So because the remaining code is same. So again, we are coming with the length here. If we want to understand the length, we can print the value also. So that we'll get to know what is the length we are having. So this particular length will print every time. So otherwise, what we can do, we'll print outside of this particular loop. Now we'll see what are all the values we are going to get. Observe, this is the size we are getting as a 7, and these are all the values. Now what happens here? So here I'm going to come up with one extra condition, something like length plus 1. I'm trying to come up with a length plus 1 because 7 is our size, but I'm trying to increase explicitly. So just for understanding what kind of the exception we are going to get. So for this purpose, I incremented here. Now you can see index is 7 and length also 7. Getting the point? So every time the index should be small number compared to the particular length here, because whenever the index and length both are in the same, so we are trying to access the one extra value which is not available in the index here. So because if you observe carefully, the size, the length will start from the 1 and the indexes start from the 0. So this is only the difference we need to understand carefully here. Okay, so when we are trying to compare these two, we need to get the indexes every time. It should be one number decrease here compared to the particular length here. Okay, so this is the way we can understand here. But now the same exception we are getting, you can see array index out of bound exception and the index 7 out of bound this particular length here. Okay, so by seeing this particular error, we should understand, so what is the mistake we are doing here? So you can see what is the mistake we are doing. Explicitly we are increasing the particular length here. Getting the point? So this is the one way to create the particular array initializer here. So both are working on the same, but only the advantage what we are going to get here, if you define like this internally, it will come up with the array size and directly it will initialize the value. Okay, now observe carefully. Instead of doing this, line number 17, I'm putting a breakpoint. Now I'm trying to run in the debug mode. So we'll see how this particular array is going to create internally. If you see this, then a particular number, now you can see in the 0 index location 10.1, 1 in the 12.2, so 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But what is the length we are having? 7. And the index is starting from the 0 to 6. If you calculate the 0 to 6 will become 7, and it is matching here. Getting the point. And whenever we are trying to use the array initializer internally, how it is performing here. So same way how we did manually in the above example. Getting the point. So this is a way the example are going to work internally with the help of this particular array initializer. Any questions?
No question.
Okay. Now, so what I'm doing this using the same example, I'm trying to find out the some average here. So how we can find out this particular average here? Let me remove this. So because we already identified the what is the length we are going to get, and I am trying to come up with the one more variable called result. Okay. So what is the default value for this particular double data type? That is called 0.0. 0.0. So this is very important. We need to understand here. And later, now what I'm doing here. Okay. Now what I will do, I'm going to print to this particular average. So how I'm trying to print, observe. So I don't want to use because we are trying to come up with a one line of statement. Okay, this is the one line of statement will print. So whenever it is trying to print this particular one line of statement, okay, sorry, I don't want to print the numbers. So for the average, now what I will do, I'm going to use result is equals to result plus nums of I. Okay, so what I'm doing here, initially the result is 0. Now I'm trying to do some addition, whatever the num of I, like the first the whatever the index value we are going to get in the I value, based on that I'm loading the original value. I'm trying to set into this particular result. So it is keep on repeating for up to the satisfy this particular length condition, and finally we are going to get the results. So once we get this particular result here, now what I'm doing here, I'm going to print the particular average here. So how we can print, if I want to print this particular average, let me result divided by with 7. Okay, this is our size. Getting the point. Now this is important here. If we observe in the earlier example also we discussed here something like num is equals to num multiplied with some 2. Same way, instead of multiplying here, now what I'm doing is I'm doing some addition here. So based on this particular expression, what is the value we are going to get, I'm trying to adding into this particular result. So this number will change based on this particular. Okay, so I. Now observe carefully, the I value will try to increase 1. So repeatedly until this particular condition is failed. We'll see what happens internally. So we'll try to understand this particular simple example. Let me run this example. This is all about the average here. So what is the average we are getting? Around 56.25714285714285. Getting the point. So this is all about the average we are going to get here. Getting the point. Any questions regarding this particular average?
No. Nope.
Okay, so now if you're familiar with this particular one dimension array, now what I'm doing, I'm trying to move into the multi-dimensions array. So we'll see how this particular multi-dimensions array is going to work. Okay, so let me move into the one more example for this particular multi-dimensions array, that we'll call it as a 2D array. And I'm creating one more main method here. And here, so what I'm doing here, inside this particular main method, again, I'm going to create a 2D dimensions array. So same thing, like I'm trying to come up with the data type. So earlier we come up with the int and double. So same thing I'm going to use here, int. So this is the reference variable. But what we need to understand here, I'm trying to come up with two brackets here. Getting the pen. So this is the 2D dimensions array we are going to discussing here. And now after this, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to create this particular int. And here, so we should provide the two sizes here. Getting the pen. So we should provide the two sizes. So how we can come up with this particular two sizes? The first one is 4 I'm giving, and the second one is 5 I'm giving. Okay, so just for understanding, I'm trying to give this particular 4 and 5, and how this particular diagram is going to look. So this is very important here. Okay, now you can see 1, 2, and 3 and 4. So it will start from the 0, 1, 2, and 3. Getting the point. And this is the 4 one. This is the 4 one here. So 0 to 3, it will become 4. The size will become 4. And the second one I'm giving like this: 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5. Something I think we got extra. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is not available, only 0 to 4. So 0 to 4, it's become 5. Okay, this is all about this particular. So just we can identify row and column here. So this is the 2D dimensions array will work internally. This is the diagram here. This is very important here. And now how we created this entire thing is going to work as a 2D. This entire work is going to work as a 2D. So it will work as a rows and it will work as a columns here. Now how we can initialize the values? This is important. How we can initialize the values here. So observe carefully. Observe carefully how we can come up with this particular 2D initializing the value. So to initialize the value, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to come up with multiple for loops here. So observe. Okay, instead of defining this, here I will come up with the I comma j comma k. So default value I'm initializing as a 0. For these three variables, I'm trying to initializing the default value as a 0. And now what I'm doing here, so again I'm initializing I is equals to 0. And later, what is the condition we have? The condition we are having 4. Because first we'll try to initialize the row level values. Later we'll come up with the column level. And what is the condition here? Condition I less than 4. And we'll come up with the iteration here. And internally, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to use one more loop. So why I'm using this particular loop? This is very important here. So this section we'll call it as a nested loop. So don't worry, we'll try to discuss how the nested loop will work later, but try to understand the current example, how we are trying to insert the data into this particular diagram. Okay, now j is equals to 0 and j less than 5. Getting the point? Because we are having two sizes. The first size we are having 4 and the second size we are having 5. Now what we can do after this particular size, we can come up with a j++. And now what I'm doing here internally, I'm trying to increasing the j value. So whenever we are trying to increasing this particular j value, now what we can do, so this is the reference variable we are having, and here what I'm giving I. Okay, it will insert in the row level, and the second one I'm giving as a j. Getting the point? I'm giving as a j. So this is the particular column level. And what is the value I'm going to initialize? The value I'm going to initialize k. Getting the point? So this is very important, we need to understand. So if we observe carefully, the first one will work as a row level. The first one, this is working as a this section 0 to 3. Okay, and this particular second one is working as this section 0 to 4, and k, the value, original value we are initializing into this particular location. And now what we need to understand here, I value 0 and j value 0. We'll understand here how I and j values are going to increase internally. Okay, now back to here. So I'm going to work with the k value and k plus plus. Okay, so this is the loops here. It is trying to initialize the data into this particular diagram. Now we'll understand how this particular diagram is going to insert the data. So compare here. Now we are in the line number 7. So what we are doing here, I value 0. So we initialize the I value 0. The condition is I less than 4. I less than 4 is nothing but, so 0 less than 4. So this condition is satisfying or not? Yes, this particular condition will satisfy, because 4 value is the bigger value compared to this particular 0. Now what happens internally, it will move into this particular line number 8. Now what we are doing is j value 0, j less than 5. So 0 less than 5. 0 less than 5. This particular condition is also will satisfy. So once the condition is satisfying here, now what we are doing here? So we are moving into this particular line number 9. So what exactly we are doing line number 9? So basically whatever the key value, like whatever the k value we have, the k value we are trying to insert into this particular I and j location. So the I and j location which are available under this particular 2 dimensions array. Okay, now you can see I value 0, j value 0. So where exactly this is pointing? You can see I value 0 and j value 0. So this is the block. Getting the point? So this particular block is pointing here. Getting the point? Because I value 0 and j value also 0. So think about this. This will pointing as I, and this section is pointing as a j. Getting the point? So this right side section is pointing as a j. Okay, now what is the k value we are having? The k value I'm trying to initialize as a 0, because line number 6 we are coming with the 0. The line number 6, I and j and k, all the 3 variables we are initializing as a 0. Okay, so now the k value initialized. Now line number 10, what I'm doing here, the line number 10, what I'm doing here, k plus plus. So the k plus plus will become k1. So once a k value 1, which loop is going to repeat here? So this is very important here. Whatever the nested loop we have, the nested loop only repeat, not the outer loop. Okay, so if we observe, this one will repeat. The line number 8, whatever the loop we have, the particular loop only it's repeated here. Okay, now the j value will become 1, not the k value. K value will still is 0. Okay, only the j value changed. Okay, here we need to check 1 less than 5. 1 less than 5 condition is satisfied. Once the condition is satisfied, again we are moving into this. So here we should think a little bit carefully. I value how much? I value 0. So j value how much? J value 1. Get in the pen. So j value just now modified here. So once the j value will 1, what is the k value? The k value also it's modified. The k value will become 1. Okay, now, so where exactly it is pointing here? So still I value 0. We already discussed this entire section is pointing to the I is 0. Okay, now still we are in the 0 index location. But what is the value is modified? J value. So J value how much? 1. Getting the point. Now we move into the next block. So which is pointing to this particular section. This is pointing to the second one. What is the k value? The k value we are having 1. Okay, so this line number 9 is completed. Now we are coming into the line number 10. What we are doing? Line number 10. Again the k value is increased to 2. Okay, and what about the iteration? The next iteration for the nested loop. What is the nested loop? J. And the j value will become 2. Getting the point? So now you can see 2 less than 5. 2 less than 5 condition is satisfied. Once the condition is satisfied, now we can see still I value 0, j value 2. Once the j value 2, we are moving into the second block. Okay, what is the k value? The k value we are initializing as a 2. So finally the k value will become 3, and the same way j value will become 3 because we are inside the nested loop. So 3 less than 5. 3 less than 5 condition is satisfying. So now we are moving into this particular 3. Okay, later the k value will become 4 and j value will become 4. Okay, and 4 less than 5. 4 less than 5 also will satisfied. And once it is satisfied, the value will initialize and the k value will become 5 and the j value also will become 5. So whenever the j value will become 5, the condition we are making 5 less than 5, this condition will fail. 5 less than 5 condition is fail because when this particular condition will satisfy, whenever we are trying to use 5 less than or equals to 5. 5 less than or equals to 5, this condition will return true, this condition will return false. So this is the difference between these two. Whenever we are trying to use the equal operator, it will try to compare the both the values. But whenever, even though the both the values are same, the less than operator will return false. Okay, this we need to understand. Now whenever this particular 5 value is modified and the condition is fail, now what happens here? So from here it will move into the next level. What is the next level? Again we back to the line number 7. So whenever we are backing into the line number 7, now I value will become 1. Getting the point? So now the I value will become 1. So whenever the I value will become 1, what happens here? Again we need to check I less than 4. Sorry, what is the I value? 1. 1 less than 4. The condition is satisfying here, this block. 1 less than 4, it is satisfying. Once it is satisfied here, again it will back to the line number 8. Again it is back to the line number 8. So once it is back to the line number 8, now what is the j value? So previously j value 5, but these values will gone. These values are not available now. Why these values are not available here? Because the second time we are coming, and the second time here, this particular block of code. Getting the point? This particular block of code, it is trying to initializing the 0. This is very important here. Okay, whenever we are trying to coming from the next time, the whatever the previous value we are used here, the previous value is no longer available. Again the j value will start from the 0. Again j value will start from the 0. Okay, but here the k value is not going to modify. The k value is not going to modify. Okay, now observe I value 1, j value 0. Okay, so you can see I value 1 this, j value 0. So which block is pointing? Which one is pointing here? This is the second one because we are j is in the 0 index location, I in the first index location. What is the k value? The k value we are going to initialize as a 5. The k value is not going to modify here. Getting the point? This is important here. Okay, later k value will become 6 and j value will become 1, but again the I value is not going to modify one more time. Getting the point? Okay, so now if you see, again we need to check 1 less than 5. Again we need to check the 1 less than 5. The condition will satisfy. So here the value we are going to make as a 6, and later k value will become 7 and j value will become 2, and 2 less than 5 condition will satisfy. The 7 value I'm trying to initializing, and k value will become 8 and j value will become 3, and 3 less than 5 will satisfy. So the k value we will initialize as 8 and later 9, and the j value will 4. So whenever the condition 4 completed, again we need to check 5 less than 5 will not satisfy. Again it will go to the 7. So now the I value will become 2. Whenever I value will become 2, again the j value will become 0. Right, j value will become 0. So same way it will try to coming back to the and come into the nested loop, come into the nested loop here. So this is the way the loops are going to work internally. Finally, so these are all the values we are going to get. So 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14, something like 15, so 16, 17, some values. Okay, so this is the way the 2D dimensions array is going to work internally. This is very important here. So any questions on this particular diagram?
No.
Okay, so if we don't have anything, so we'll try to run this particular simple example, how it is working internally. Let me remove this. So this is section we are initializing the data. Now what I will do, I will put a breakpoint line number 7. I will run in the debug mode. So we'll identify how this particular array is going to create. So you can see here, this is the 2D. We need to understand here. So observe carefully, 0, 1, 2, 3. This is the row. And if I'm trying to expand this, these are all the particular columns here. Okay. Now we'll identify how the values are going to work internally. Let me move on to the next line. This we already identified I and j and k values are 0. Okay, so now we are entering into j. So why we are entering into j? So because I value 0, so I less than 4, like 0 less than 4. You can see here. So you are going to get all the values here. Okay, now I'm moving into the next line. Now observe I value 0, j value 0, k value 0. So this all the values are 0. Now we is entering into this section. What is the k value now? That is the k value now. You can see the k value 1. Line number 6 is giving the k value 1. Okay, still I value 0 and j value also 0. Now I am moving into the next line. Now you can see k value 1 and j value also 1. Okay, now if I'm trying to come back to the next line, now you can see here. So in the variable section, so try to identify this variable section. This variable section and this one will give you the information how it is working internally. So now the I value we modified with 1. Okay. So now back to here, we'll come back to this next iteration. So j value will become 2 and k value will become 2. So k value also it's observe here, the k value modified inserted into the second index location and j value 3. So 3 is initialized here and j value 4. Okay, so 4 values also initialized, 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, first row is going to complete now. If we observe k value, so now we are checking the nested loop. Okay, now we'll go back to the outer loop. Line number 7 we enter. Now if I'm trying to click on the next, again it is coming to the nested, but now what is I value 1? I value we are getting as a 1. So whenever the I value we are getting as a 1, so we need to come back to this. We need to come back to the second one. Now observe what is the j value. You can see j value 0. J value 0. Okay, what is the k value? 5. I value 1. Now, so in the 0 index location, the 5 value is initialized here. The 5 value is initialized here. So k value is increasing. K value 6 and I value 1. Whatever the j value is also 1. So k value 7. J value 2, I value 1. Okay, so J3, K8. So now if you see J4, so the J4 is completed. Now this is important. So from the line number 8, it will not enter into the line number 9. Now it will go back to the line number 7. So see line number 7 it is moving. Now it will come back to the again line number 8. And whenever it is come back to the line number 8, the I value is modifying here. Earlier it is 1, now it is modified to the second. Okay, so this the second one, again it is trying to repeating multiple times. Once a condition will fail, so 4. So this is the last time. Now it will go back to the line number 7. Getting the point? So now it will coming back to this. So this is all about the last iteration. This is all about the last iteration. So if you see from here, the line number 7, it will not come back to the the particular line number 8. It will come out of the entire loop here. So you can see it is coming out of the loop. Why it is coming out of the loop? Because you can see I value 4. I value 4. Whenever I value 4, 4 less than 4, the condition is fail here. The condition is fail. Whenever the condition is fail, it is coming out of this particular loop here. Now what we can see, if I'm trying to expand this, you will get an idea. All the values are initialized here. All the values are initialized here. The last section also I'm trying to expand here. Now you can see all the values are up to 19. So these are all about the values initializing into the 2D. Now we identify, we initialize the data, but how we can load the data? So we initialize into this particular 2D dimension, but we want to load the data from this particular 2D dimension. For this, now what I need to write here, I need to define one more loop here. So I'm going to copy the same. So why I'm copying this particular same here? Basically, here we are going to come up with the same nested loops here to work on this particular 2D dimensions. To work on this particular 2D dimensions here. Okay, now observe, I'm removing this, so I will come up with this particular outer loop here, and internally I will use the nested loop. This is important, we need to use here. Okay, so after this is out I'm trying to use, and here 2D, here we should give I j. So whenever I'm trying to give, this will print the values. Okay, and I want to come up with a print here, and finally empty. So this is the empty println I want to use. So why I'm trying to use empty println? Because we already discussed, whenever in the first class, the println will give you the next line. Println will give you the next line. So when it is going to give you the next line, so once this particular loop fail the condition, it will try to come into this particular println, and it will come back to the next line. Again, it will go for the line number 12. Okay, so first we'll see the normal output, how it will work, and later we'll debug something, how it is working internally. Now you can see, so these are all the 4 rows and 5 columns here. So the same expected output we are getting or not? So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 0 to 5, like this is the length of 5, and this is the 4, the 4 size. Okay, any questions, any confusion?
No.
Okay, so this is all about the 2D dimension we identified. Now what we can do here, we'll try to come up with one more example here. So we'll see how we can come up with something like the 3D dimensions here. Okay, so now we identified one dimensions and the 2D dimension, and we'll try to identify the 3D. So let me connect it with one more class. So it's like a 3D matrix. Okay, now what I will do inside this particular main method, now what I'm trying to write here, again you can see we'll come up with the int. So see, the simple example I'm trying to discuss with the int, you can try to check with the other data type like char, boolean, byte, short, int we covered, long, as well as float and double. You can try to come up with another data type. So same syntax we are going to use, only the difference here, just will change the data type here. Okay, now observe first, second, and third. This is the 3D dimension we are going to use, and this is important here. So what is the size we can give? So this I'm giving as a 3, and the second and third we already identified 4 and 5. Okay, so you can change based on your requirement here, but what we can understand here, how this diagram will give you here. So whenever we are trying to give the size here, so we should understand how this particular the 3D matrix is going to work internally. So let me design this particular matrix first. Okay, so here this is the first one. Again 0, 1, 2, something like 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 0, 1, 3, and 4. Okay, so this is one we identified, but same way we are going to come up with the second and third. Getting the point? This is This is the 3D matrix related example. So 0, 1, 2, so 3 and 4. Getting the point. So this is this particular matrix internally it will design. Now what we can understand, these three, the three will work like this: 0, 1, 2. This is the first purpose here, and the second one we already identified here. Internally it will check 0, 1, 2, something like 3, and here we identified already 0, 1, 2, 3, something like 4. Okay, so extra what we are adding here, the first array we are adding here, so that internally it will create like this. So these are all the 3D arrays. Now what we can do, we need to initialize the data. How we can initialize the data? So this is important. To initialize the data, what exactly we can do? So same thing we can perform like here, something like same for loop we need to use, but only let me the three variables here: int I comma j comma k. I comma j comma k value we are holding 0, and here, so what we can understand here, this particular I is equals to 0 and I less than 3, the first main condition we should use, and I plus plus. And finally one more for loop I'm trying to use, something like j is equals to 0 and j less than 4, j plus plus. And one more we need to use, k is equals to 0, k less than 5, and k plus plus. Okay, so if we want to come up with the one more variable, something like x, and here what I will do, sys out here, sorry, not sys out, 3D I, j and k is equals to I, j, k is equals to what we can give here. What is the value we can give? X. Okay, and finally I want to increase with the x plus plus. Getting the point? So this is important here. So how we identify the nested loops here? So same way it will work. What is the highest priority here? The highest priority is going to taken care by this particular block. Okay, because this the k value multiple times it will become 0, not only one time here. Okay, sometimes this particular j also will try to 0, sometime compared to this particular k, it is a less. Okay, and this is the 0 time is very less because only one time the I value 0. Okay, the j value will become 0 more 2 times, but the k value will 0, so around 10 or 15 times here. Getting the point? Because this loop will repeat multiple times. Once the k value satisfied, it will go to the nested loop. Again, it will repeat the k value. Okay, so once the j value will not satisfied, it will go to the I. Getting the point? So this is the way we'll initialize the value. So let's see how we can come up with this particular example. I'm going to put a breakpoint line number 6 and we'll try to debug into this example. Now run in the debug mode. So I and jk, I value 0 and j value 0 and k value 0. Here you can identify I, j, k, or you can see in the below. And the variable section also we can easily understand I and j and k values are 0. And the last also x value 0. Okay, so x value 0 initialize. Where it is initialized in the first block. It is initialized in the first block. And it will keep on increasing the k value first. So now we will see the first row, sorry, the first column, it will try to complete here. Now you can see the second one it is mapping here. So again see the k value is repeating one more time. So the second row it's repeating. Getting the point? So this is the way it will try to initialize the data. Now what we can do, we'll try to get the data from this particular 3D array. So this is, we can easily understand here. Let me erase this. Back to here. Sorry, I want to copy this. Okay, so second one I want to copy. Okay, and third one I want to copy. And here, this is what I'm trying to print. 3D 1, 2, 3. I comma j comma and k. Okay, so this is I'm trying to add, and after this, now what I will do, I will try to come up with the next line here, and finally here also I want to make one more next line. So why I'm making these two, because we are going to get 3 blocks differently. For this the line number 19 will differentiate the all the 3 blocks, and the line number 17 one will differentiate the each row and column. Getting the point? So these are all the 2 empty print lanes I am trying to use. Okay, first what I will do, I will try to comment out this, the line number 19. So we'll see how this particular output is printing. If you see, you cannot understand how it is printing. Okay, first I made some little bit wrong here. Okay, back to here. This is not a println, it is print here. Okay, so let me rerun one more time. Observe carefully. You cannot understand here. So this is the enter values are coming here. Okay, so just we are getting some space, like all the values are printing in the next line once the k block is completed. But here this is coming from the one dimension, or this is coming from the second, or this is coming from the third. We could not understand here because this is coming all the lines one by one. So if I'm trying to enable this, getting the point, if I'm trying to enable this, so now observe the same output here. You can see we can easily differentiate here. So this is the first block, second block, and third one. Getting the point? So the internally, the previous example we identified rows and column here. So we don't want to discuss, but what is the final output here? So what I the same diagram I provided, with the same diagram we are getting the output or not? Okay, so any questions? Any questions regarding this particular 3D matrix?
Nope.
Okay, so these are all the example we discussed related to our array concepts here. We'll try to identify remaining informations like operators. So simple basic example we discussed earlier, like addition, subtraction, the multiplication, we already defined some example, but we'll try to identify some modulo operators and increment operators and decrement operators, how it is going to work. So we'll try to continue tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.